Our son has found his home in her eyes. What could move a parent to say such words, so tender, so certain, so full of quiet awe? While fans speculated, while tabloids chased shadows, it was Yoo Yeon-seok's own family who broke the silence, with a single sentence that sent ripples across the internet. Welcome to Red Carpet Revealed, where today, we dive deep into the story behind this unforgettable approval, and the love that inspired it. Not the meeting, not the moment, and certainly not the sentence that would travel from one whispered phone call in Gyeongsangnam due to the front page of every entertainment outlet in Seoul. But as is often the case with stories worth telling, the truth had no intention of staying hidden. A house that never spoke. For nearly 2 decades, actor Yoo Yeon-seok lived under the gentle but unshakable gaze of his parents, 2 former professors who prized discretion above all else. They rarely granted interviews, never commented on his career, and were known in their neighborhood simply as the quiet couple whose son became a star. So, when news broke that Yeon-seok had introduced Chae Soo-bin, his rumored girlfriend, to them in a private family dinner, it didn't just surprise the industry, it sent a ripple of disbelief through the tightly guarded walls of Korean celebrity culture. No one expected them to speak. And yet, the sentence came, simple, trembling, and unforgettable. Our son has found his home in her eyes. A dinner meant to be small. Sources close to the family described the event as humble, tense, and strangely cinematic. The dinner took place not in a luxury hotel or Seoul penthouse, but in the family's own countryside home. A place where photos of Yeon-seok in school uniform still hung on the walls. Where the kettle still whistled the same way it had 20 years ago. Chae Soo-bin arrived first. Early, alone, she wore a modest hanbok, cream-colored with soft pink trim. In her hands, pear wine, personally brewed for the occasion. She bowed deeply at the door. Not once but 3 times. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped into the home of a man she had grown to love, but barely knew how to claim. The air was heavy, said a relative who witnessed the dinner from a corner seat. The kind of silence where even the sound of a spoon feels too loud. Under the surface, questions came, gently at first. Then more pointed. What were her intentions? How would she balance acting with marriage? Should it come? Did she believe in tradition? In quiet sacrifice? In loyalty when the cameras weren't rolling? Soo-bin answered each one with the sincerity of someone who knew she was auditioning, not for a role on screen, but for a place in a family that had never let outsiders in. Yoo Yeon-seok, sitting beside her, remained calm, protective. His hand brushed hers under the table. But he didn't interrupt, not once. It wasn't until dessert that everything changed. A drop of persimmon syrup had landed on Soo-bin's cheek. Yeon-seok, instinctively, reached out and wiped it gently with his thumb. His mother, who had said little until then, simply watched. She set down her spoon, excused herself, and cried. The sentence that was never meant to leave that room. Later that night, she made a phone call to her sister overseas. It was private, quiet, reflective. She's not what I imagined, she admitted, but our son has found his home in her eyes. I saw it, and that's enough. What she didn't know was that her niece was within earshot. And the next morning, the words were repeated at a family brunch in Seoul. 2 days later, an entertainment columnist picked it up from an anonymous tip. By the end of the week, it had become headline news. A scene too beautiful to last? The public devoured the story. A gentle mother's approval. A tearful moment. A poetic phrase so intimate it felt like a line from a drama script. And for a time, it seemed like Yeon-seok and Soo-bin's love had crossed the last threshold, family. But life rarely gives us fairy tales without shadows. What the headlines didn't report, what no one had the courage to print, was what happened 2 days after the dinner. Yeon-seok's father, who had remained mostly silent that night, reportedly pulled his son aside during a morning walk. According to a staff member who overheard part of the conversation, the father said one line, low, serious, final, "She's wonderful, but don't mistake peace for permanence." It wasn't a staged reveal. There were no stylists, no PR managers, no media planted outside. The meeting took place in the Yoo family's ancestral home, nestled on the outskirts of Gyeongsangnam-do. among cherry blossom trees not yet in full bloom. It was the kind of house where the wood still creaked with memories. And the walls held their breath for you. Chai Soo-bin, nervous but determined, arrived carrying a small bundle of traditional sweets she'd made herself. She wore a long beige coat. Plain but elegant. Her hair was tied back. Her steps, though quiet, were intentional. She bowed so deeply. It felt like she was greeting more than just two people, said a distant relative who was present that night. Inside, the table had already been set. Outside, not even the wind moved. The conversation that wasn't supposed to be emotional. The beginning of the meal was polite, slightly stiff. A conversation about theater, then about education, and finally about the pressures of fame. Soo-bin answered every question with grace. But it wasn't her words that changed the mood, it was her stillness. Her silence when she didn't know the answer. Her eyes when Yoo Yeon-seok spoke. And his eyes when he looked at her. At one point, she reached for her cup with trembling fingers. He steadied it gently. No one said a word. But something shifted. Later, after the dishes had been cleared and the kettle refilled, Yoo Yeon-seok's mother stood up, walked to the window, and simply said, "Our son has found his home in her eyes." She didn't look at anyone when she said it. Not even Soo-bin, but her voice quivered slightly. And that was enough. No photos, no announcements, just a moment that lived and passed. The sentence made its way into public consciousness through a whisper chain of relatives, calls, and one well-connected entertainment journalist. But for the two families, it was a moment far removed from fame or formality. Yoo Yeon-seok's father remained mostly quiet. He nodded once during the dinner, poured a second cup of tea for Soo-bin, and later walked her to the gate. He said little, but before letting go of her hand, he offered a rare smile. "It's been a long time since this house had real warmth," he murmured, and then, they left. As the night deepened, the couple stepped out of the house. Fingers still interlaced. Neither hurried. The gravel crunched beneath their shoes. The gate creaked, then clicked behind them. They didn't speak. There was no need. And from inside, the mother watched, her figure barely visible behind the papered doors. But there was one thing no one mentioned. No one pointed it out. No one dared to, because just as the couple crossed the threshold and stepped into the night, the old red lantern above the gate flickered. Once, twice, then again, a strange flicker, erratic, delicate, but unmistakable. And the thing was, it was a calm night. No wind, no storm, no reason for it to move at all. A house, a blessing, and a flickering light. Perhaps it was nothing, a fault in the wire, a coincidence, or perhaps, just perhaps, it was the house remembering. Because in homes built over time, some lights don't flicker without reason.